the title said, of audio, live audio and digital audio, some of the background stuff that you might not have learned, and so that it gives you a foundation for buying equipment, for using software, for making really important decisions, like why am I converting from this file to this file? You know, what should I choose for this number that I'm asked to choose from? So I'm going to try to give you some fundamentals in the most easy words and stories that I possibly can. Hi, come on in. And you might, yeah, right there is great. I'm going to use this board right here. So let's start at the beginning. I'm going to start with analog and then go into digital. And feel free to ask me a question along the way. We can make this as much discussion as you want. I want you to get out of it what you need to. So I'm going to be pretty basic, so if some of you know a whole lot, then you might be bored or not. I'm not sure. We'll see. So let me erase the title here. Okay, so we'll start with the microphone. And we're going to bring this down to big-time basics. I'm not going to talk about really how it works, like magnets and all of that. We're just going to talk about the basics. It's very similar to your eardrum in that a microphone has a diaphragm in it. And some of the most important things that I want to explain is how the microphone works with a balanced cable and why balanced cables are so important. So let's kind of digest or take apart this microphone, unpack it. We have a diaphragm on here. It's a really thin piece of either metal, hi, come on in, or some other material that's like plasticky. And so there's a wire that comes off of here, and we'll say that this has a certain signal coming off of it. And then we have another wire, basically, that comes off of that diaphragm, and it creates a signal that's the opposite polarity. Okay, so what I mean by that is it's flipped upside down. So it looks completely mirrored to the other signal. And then we have another wire that's ground. So you've seen these cables, XLR cables, and they're balanced. They have, you know, those three wires in them. One of them's the ground, one of them goes to that part, and one of them goes to that part. So the reason that this is important, that these are in different polarities, is we take this microphone cable and we lay it across things like this power cord that's on the ground that you can kind of see, or there's cell phones, or there's other magnetic fields that are around, and that adds noise to our signal. And I'm an audio kind of nerd, so I think that this is so cool, that what happens here is we've got noise, and I'm just arbitrarily making it look like these little triangles right there. The same noise is added to both signals, the one that's this polarity and the one that's opposite. Whenever it gets to the mixer flips one of those upside down. Okay, so I'm going to flip it like this, and that means that the noise is flipped as well. Okay, so we no longer have this signal going down the line, or whenever it gets to the board, and the board sees this signal and this signal, which they look exactly the same except for the noise. So what does the noise do? The noise cancels itself out. That's why balanced cables are so amazing. Anything that happens between the microphone and the mixer, which can be a long way from your stage or where you're a band and everybody's playing, all the way to the back of the sanctuary, is a long run, and a lot can happen. And so in balanced cables, all that stuff that happens in the middle is gone. And so that's the reason you use balanced cables with 3 little wires in them. You don't use, your guitars usually have what's called a TS cable, so it's just tip and sleeve. It's 2 little wires running through here. That's unbalanced. Your keyboards have unbalanced cables, which is just a TS, and so it's just 2 wires. So that phenomenon, this awesome thing that happens with balance, does not happen with your unbalanced cables. Instead, you have your signal, and then you have a ground wire too. and the noise happens on both. Hopefully the ground wire kind of gets all of the noise on it, and so it can't get to the signal, but oftentimes a lot of the noise gets in the signal anyways, and so you end up with noise in your board if you run any further than 10 feet. So unbalanced cables should only go 10 feet, which is fine. Most guitarists are playing and they have their one little wire that goes to a direct box. And I'm sure you've seen these on the stage, just on the ground. And the same can be done with a keyboard. But what the direct box does is it translates it from that unbalanced cable into something that's balanced. And it can be run 1,000 feet, and it's just fine. So that's the purpose of direct boxes, to change from something that's unbalanced to balanced. There's some other reasons, but that's mostly what's being done there. You can also take a computer, which I performed in a lot of things with my computer in college. And so just to bring this even further, the sound that comes out of a computer, the wires that are used, are usually stereo, okay? And which is tip, ring, sleeve. So automatically you would say, oh, that's balanced. There's 3 wires. So I can run that forever. It's not. There's a right and a left and then a ground. So the right signal for your right ear, the left signal for your left ear, and then the ground. So you can plug that into your laptop if it's on the stage. I can think of scenarios in church services where you might have a laptop up front having sound coming out. A lot of keyboardists use Logic now, or Mainstage, or even guitarists do in their in their laptop. So you can use one of these cables and you can break it out to left and right. Notice they're both unbalanced. So we have tip and sleeve, tip and sleeve. So I can only run this for 10 feet. This is probably why the cable that I have is a 10-foot cable. And I can run that into my direct box. I would need 2 because it's stereo. And then I can run it into my balanced cable and run it 1,000 feet. So there's a lot of ways of getting everything on your stage into a balanced cable eventually, and then run it across the board.
Okay.
Yeah?
What happens if you have a wireless line?
Nothing that you have to worry about, because wireless mics send their signal to a box, and then that box has a balanced signal that comes out, and usually that box is set right next to the board, and then they'll just take the balanced signal out of that, and then they'll plug it into their mixing board. Yeah. So most wireless mics boxes, it's the receiver, has a balanced signal coming out. And you can usually flip between mic level and line level, so that gets into something else. This microphone, what it does is it's a transducer, so it's changing air pressure into into voltage. So it's changing one form of energy into another form of energy, and in doing that, very little voltage changes go down this line. And so here, let's go back to high school for just a second, and remember what's happening with me speaking right now. So if I'm talking to you, there we go. My voice, let's say, is creating this wave form, and we have to go, what does this mean? Well, when I'm speaking, I'm creating pressure in the air, and then I'm also creating rarefactions, so compression and rarefaction. This is really easy to visualize in your mind with a string bass. So if I take a string on a string bass, and I pull it back, and then I let go, then it's going to pressurize the air, all those little particles, and then it's going to pull back, and it's going to make a void, so it's going to have rarefactions in the air. So those little particles are going to pull apart, and it's going to go really fast. So I pull that, it goes like this, so it's making compressions in the air, and also voids, so rarefactions in the air. And it's going to end up, if you had special glasses, it would end up looking like something where all the particles are really close together, and then all the particles are kind of farther apart, and then they're really close together again, and then far apart, close together again. And that's with the string being pulled back, and then it goes forward and backwards and forward and backwards and forward. And so the top part of a wave is whenever the particles of the air are being pressurized and pushed together. The lower part is whenever those particles in the air are apart. That's why in space, you speak to somebody and they can't hear you because there's no particles, there's no air for them to vibrate. So, to just put this in your brain forever, I hope, this is the way that sound travels. Do you know what I had for lunch today?
I do not.
Aha! Thank goodness, right? If sound did not travel as I was speaking, then you would smell my breath, because we would say that the particles in my lungs are going all the way to you.
Salami.
No.
Oh, okay.
I would never have salami.
Oh, okay.
So instead, the particles in my lungs are hitting other particles, and then those particles hit the next particle next to them, and so it's a chain reaction. So let's do the wave. If I do this, then you go all the way down. That is more like how sound travels to you. It's that your particle hit that particle, which hit this particle, etc., etc. It's not like crowd surfing. Sound does not move like a particle going all the way to one place. They just hit other particles. Okay, so that brings us back to the microphone. I'm speaking into the microphone. Whenever there's a compression, this little diaphragm inside of here moves one way. When there's a rarefaction, it moves the other way. And so this is what's happening. If I make this type of sound, the diaphragm is going this way and then comes back and then goes this way and this way. And so what happens is we end up with voltage changes that look like this. So this is a high voltage, a lower voltage, a high voltage, a lower voltage. But the microphone creates very small voltage changes. And then our mixer makes those larger. So it amplifies this to look like that. So we have mic level and line level. So the voltage changes are very small here, and the voltage changes are very large there. So I'm saying that because if I speak into this microphone, the voltage changes are really small, and then I plug it in, and then the preamp right here is what changes it from this really small amounts of changes to this, large amounts of voltage changes. So when you buy a mixer, what you're paying for is the preamp, mostly. If you spend more money on a preamp, on a mixer, they're putting the money into the preamp, and it's going to sound better. It might sound just fine to you, but if you want to turn up the gain a whole lot, because you have a very quiet sound, maybe a little kid like whispering and talking at in a play or something, and you have to turn it up a whole lot. If it's a cheap mixer, you're going to turn up that volume, and you're going to hear a lot of noise in there because it's a cheap preamp. But if it's a very expensive mixer with good preamps, you're going to be able to turn that up a lot, and you're just going to hear that little voice talking, but it's going to be loud, but it's not going to have shh in there at all. Okay.
So gain just is a volume thing?
Yes, and we're going to get into gain structure and how that's perfect, but yes, gain has to do with turning up the volume of the source that's coming in. Okay, so far we have a microphone going down a balance cable, going into a mixer, which the very first thing that it hits is the preamp. And then it's going to go out of there into a speaker, or it's going to go straight into an amplifier. Okay, make sure this is turned all the way down. Okay, so in this speaker is an amplifier. Okay, an amplifier takes this line level signal and it makes it even greater with power and stuff involved in it to make the speaker move back and forth, and it has to do with magnets and all that kind of stuff. But what happens is the speaker moves back and forth at the same rate. So the speaker goes out and in and out and in, out, in, out, like that. It's just moving at the same rate as the waveform, so that your eardrum then moves at the same rate as this, because of the vibrations in the air. So Some of your churches probably have amplifiers, another unit right here, before the speaker. And I could take apart this speaker and it has an amplifier in it. So, so it's really, all your brain needs to really think about is that the mixer hooks to an amplifier in this case. Okay, so let's go through proper gain structure. This is something that a lot of people get really, really wrong. And if you do this right, and it's very fundamental, I want to say that it's a law. It's like there's really only one great way to do this in my mind. I know that sounds really absolute, but this is the way I believe that this should be done based on a lot of good data. So here you go. You have your microphone, you plug it into your mixer. And this is a cheapo mixer, but everything that's on here is all that's necessary for something to happen. What you do is you take your amplifier first and turn it all the way down. Okay? So your amplifier is turned all the way down. And then you take your mixer and you put the main outs at unity. What that means is that's the best, that's a sweet spot. That's the best place for the sound to come out of that mixer. That's what it's built for. It's going to give you a great signal that's powerful. Okay? And then you take your first channel that you're working with, your first strip of where you're plugged in, and you put that at unity. So what I mean by that is you usually have this fader that you get to pull up. And there's a place on there that says unity or it says 0 dB. And anything above that is being amplified. Anything lower than that, the signal is being compressed. It's being made quieter. And so we have like negative 60, negative 80, negative infinity, or whatever. So you're going to pull up that fader to be unity. Same for the channel and same for the main outputs. So far we have the amplifier all the way down, the main out as unity or 0, and the channel at unity or 0. And you're going to have your gain or trim knob at the lowest it can be. Okay, so it's just like our amplifier. Our amplifier is at lowest as it can be. And you put on some headphones or you just use your eyes and you turn up the trim until you get a really good reading on your level meter on here, which you don't want to clip that. So I'm gonna talk in here and I'm just gonna keep turning this up until, okay, so now see I'm kind of into the orange, but I'm not clipping. And I could use my earphones to like hear if that sounds good. You want this, the easy way to remember this is you want the Goldilocks kind of zone. You don't want it to be too hot. You don't want it to be too cold. You want it to be just right. The reason you don't want it to be too hot, I know you've heard of things clipping. I know you've seen things in the red. But what does that mean? That means that if it's turned up too loud, your preamp up here, that means it's doing this to your signal. Okay, and that makes the waveform now is shaped, the voltage is now shaped like this. It boxes off those areas because the mixer just can't take it. It has a limit. And so when you hear something that's really distorted, that's what's happening. And that's why guitar pedals, that's what guitar pedals do. They turn it up too loud and they cut off and they make the sound, the wave look like that. Okay? So your preamp, the trim, is the most important part. If it's good and everything is within this boundary, so let's say it's like this, your waveform is all in there, not clipping, then it's going to be good all the way along your entire signal chain. You can work with it. If you mess it up in the beginning, you're going to be messed up along the way. Okay, so you get that perfect, and then that's when you go to your amplifier. This is if you're setting up sound, kind of for the first time. You go to your amplifier, and you have your person talk or play or whatever they're doing, and slowly turn up that amplifier until it sounds just what you want it to sound. And even a better thing to do is to get a level meter, which will read the decibel level of what's happening in the room. And so, for example, let's say you're in a room and you're looking at that level meter and it says 50, because you have a full sanctuary and there's air conditioning noise and all sorts of stuff. So it says 50 when really no one's really talking or anything. Then you want to just choose about 20 decibels above that and just have your person sing or play and just keep moving that amplifier up until it gets about 20 decibels above your quiet area. And it should be fine because you don't need it to be yelling, you don't need it to be too loud, you want it to be clear and concise. The other way that you can make things clear, and here we go, I'll turn this up. Okay, so I'm talking into the mic. The other way to make things clear is to do what's called a high pass filter. So I'm going to cut out everything that's below a certain frequency. So I'm going to cut out all of those. So I'm going to talk into this and then talk. And okay, so there we go. I kind of cut out everything below 80. So this is now making a little more sense. You can understand my voice much better than if I have it boomy and I'm talking into it like this, where it's just a normal setting. Okay, so that's a high pass filter, which a lot of mixers have. High pass filters, you just push a button, and this is what it looks like. And it just cuts off everything below a certain frequency. I would say put a high pass filter on everything that you can, everything that doesn't have a low sound in it. So your bass, don't put a high pass filter on. Your piano, don't put a high pass filter on. Your bass drum, don't put a high pass filter on. But almost everything else, your saxophone, put a high pass filter on it if it's like alto or something. It's never going to reach 80 frequency hertz. All of your vocals, put a high pass filter on them. Because the more muddy stuff that you have, it's just going to compete against other microphones. It's going to sound bad. Okay, so we've got that high pass filter. The other thing that you can do, and this is a biggie, is whenever I've created my hello.
Turn it off.
I did, didn't I? Hello. Okay, I'll even turn down the lows. This is a big problem in a lot of live sound. This is how far the microphone is from the person, and so what do? I have to keep turning up that gain. Okay, see? And what happened? I'm getting feedback. Because I had to turn it up so loud just to pick them up, that I was getting feedback with my speaker. You would also, if you have to turn it up loud, you're going to start getting everyone else around the microphone. So you have to teach people, put it a lot closer, and then that you don't have to turn it up as much, and you're not going to have feedback issues. That's a proximity thing. Try to get it as close as they can, and that's a good reason why you see those microphones that go right here for pastors and stuff. I mean, that's close. They don't have to turn up the gain hardly at all because it's right there, right in front of them. So, okay. Great. Any questions about this analog world? And I'll jump into, or anything you wanted to know kind of about this kind of stuff. If not, I'll jump into digital. Yeah? Any completely like, what are you talking about? Or is this all like this?
Are you talking about maybe the difference between condenser mic and a dynamic mic?
Sure, I'd love to. Okay, that's good. So this is a dynamic microphone. It does not need any phantom power to work. It has a magnet in there that will work without sending it power. The other type of microphone, I've got one here, is a condenser mic. And so this, if I plug it in right now, it's not going to do anything unless I don't think this even has phantom power. It's not going to do anything unless I turn on phantom power. These mics are very, very different, and it's not easy to just say, okay, if you're doing live stuff, use a dynamic. And don't use condensers. It's not as easy just to say that. There are great condenser mics that work great in live situations. Condenser mics usually pick up higher frequencies a lot stronger. They're more sensitive to higher frequencies. But we can always work with the EQ. EQ is what I just did. I pushed this button and I took out everything below a certain hertz. Another thing that you can do with EQs is make the high frequencies go down a little bit. You can take just one frequency that's buzzing, and you can do a notch filter, or a band filter, so that you can take out just one frequency. So EQs are very helpful to you, and you can make a condenser microphone work for you really well. Now, if you don't know what's going on, or you're really afraid of feedback, using a Shure SM58, it's a dynamic microphone. It's a lot harder to get feedback. So here, I'll talk right now. I'm getting in front of my speaker. I'm talking in front of the speaker. Hello. I have no feedback at this point. That's pretty impressive. If I plugged this mic in right now, it would definitely feedback. It'd have some big problems. But that little bitty microphone in front of your pastor is a condenser microphone. The microphone on the lectern right up there is also a condenser microphone, usually. They're great. They pick up sound really great. But if you have feedback issues, it's probably because it's not close enough and you're turning the thing up way too much.
Let's say you're a church with a pretty tight budget,
Uh-huh.
and right now you have like basics of everything,
Uh-huh.
and you're wanting to improve one. What would be the one to put more money in out of the three options right here?
Wow, good question. Probably the mixer is where I would start, and then I would move out as you can. You can do a whole lot with an SM58, which is $100.
And it has been for a long time.
Yeah,
That's the standard in the industry.
It
so.
doesn't move with
Yeah.
inflation.
And the price is still, $100 for a really good microphone that's going to be around when I'm dead. That's good.
Yeah. And if you want to nerd out, go and read about this. It took them years to develop and research this. It is absolutely amazing what went into this part of the microphone and how we don't get all of this hand noise because it cancels. It literally, you're nodding. You've heard about this?
Yeah.
It cancels out any hand noise because of the way it's built. It's incredible. All using physics. But, yeah. Okay, so...
And they're almost indestructible.
Yeah. People have even got them wet and end up being okay. I wouldn't do that. Okay, so let's move on to the digital kind of realm. Because we just hit halfway point, which is perfect. So, make sure I didn't miss something. Oh yeah, polar patterns. I did miss that, which I think this is really important to cover. Actually, let me just ask, does anyone not know what polar patterns are? Okay, I'll cover it. I want to make sure I didn't just say something that everyone did. Okay, so this microphone right here has what's called a cardioid polar pattern. So if I drew this on the board, if I had my mic right here, this is how it picks up sound. So that meaning that if we had this kind of a circle right here, and the middle was 0 decibels, boy, it's starting to not write as well. Oh, that's because I did it wrong. If the middle was 0 decibels, then going out of this circle is a lot greater decibels. I don't know really what it is. That said, if I have my microphone and I'm speaking right here, it's going to pick up the sound. It's going to be most sensitive and pick up the most decibels of sound. And then as I get around the microphone, when maybe I'm at this angle, it's not going to pick up sound as well. And it won't pick up sound theoretically at all from the back, okay, because this is its polar pattern. So that's really great for situations on stage to use a cardioid. Think about that. Let's say this is my stage monitor that's on the floor that's giving me feedback of, I'm a singer, and then let's say the pianist is playing and the guitarist is playing the drummer, and I ask for that to be in my stage monitor. That monitor is not going to get into the microphone with a cardioid because of the way the physics are built. Okay, so that's great. It's not going to pick up stuff from that direction. Here's where I think this matters to you, because you're probably going to pick a cardioid anyways. There's a thing called supercardioid. there's a whole lot of other ones, but that's just going to be even tighter. So it'll pick up from the front, but it'll stop picking up on the sides. It does unfortunately pick up from the back a little bit, just the way physics work. But what that means is if you use a supercardioid here for your trumpet player, and then you have another supercardioid mic right here, with this trumpet player, they're not going to pick up each other's sound because it won't pick up very well from the side. It's a sharper mic. The extreme of this is a shotgun mic, where I can pick up, if you're speaking right now, I can point it at you, and I only pick up you, and if you're speaking too and you're speaking, it won't pick up you too. You know, it's a laser kind of thing. We also have omni mics, so that means it's going to pick up sound all the way around. The application for this, I've already showed you supercardioid and cardioid. The application for omni mics is if you want to get some room sound in your recording. So a lot of audio engineers will use different types of stereo techniques in the front. They'll have two mics. Let's say you guys are a choir and you're singing. I could point mics right here, my left and right mics, to record you, and then I could also go ahead and stick an omni mic over here and another omni mic over here, and that would start. And I could mix in that omni mic a little bit into my recording, and that would get my room sound. I would only do that if I have a really good sounding room that has great reverb, and I want to pick up some more. So that's a good application of omni mics. They're also used in some stereo recordings too. But, okay, so those are polar patterns of microphones. Okay, so now we'll go into digital audio. And I set this up, I meant to have this over here. I set this up this direction on purpose. So we've got this here. And I'm going to now unplug this and replace that with this. Okay, so my output from my mixer can go into an audio interface at this point. And what this does is it translates the voltage changes into a digital kind of signal. And so we had a microphone that was a transistor and translated air pressure into voltage changes. Now we need something to translate the voltage changes into something the computer can use. So computers can only write down numbers, so discrete amounts of information. They cannot write down, or they cannot record continuous data. You all know what a record is and what a vinyl is. If you used an electron microscope and zoomed in on that, you should Google that sometime, electron microscope and record. It's amazing. You see the waveform. I mean, it's literally a continuous waveform, which the computer can never do. It can only sample points of that waveform. So this is how digital audio works. We have our wave right here, and what the computer does, what this interface does, is it goes, what is the voltage at a certain point? And so that's what it's doing. It goes, what is the voltage? 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 And then it writes down those numbers whenever it measured those numbers. Okay. And then those dots that I just put on there are the only amount of information the computer has. It cannot write down everything. It can't record a continuous thing. It can only record discrete amounts of information. So here we go. I will connect the dots. And so when it reproduces this wave, this is what it would sound like if that's the only dots that it has. That said, we would say that if I asked what is voltage, what is voltage, what is the voltage a lot faster, we would have more dots and we would recreate the wave a lot closer, right? But now we get into science, and the Nyquist theorem says that we just have to record sound at twice the frequency of the highest sound we want to get. Okay, so what is our human hearing abilities, what is the lowest sound that we can hear? Do you remember that from high school? Wow, you got some good ears. It's actually 20. But that would be cool. Yeah, 20 hertz. So, oh, decibels, you said decibels. So that's how, that you're thinking about noise floor and stuff. So you're actually smarter than what I acted like. Very good. So, yeah.
I
So
was raised in China Spring.
yeah, you were. So 20 hertz. So if a string bass was to like really loosen their lowest string and pull it, it'd be like, we would hear 20 hertz, and then we can hear up to 20,000 hertz. Okay. So so that means that we would need to sample this at twice the highest frequency that we want to hear. So we would have to sample it 40,000 times a second. Okay, per second. So that's why we end up with CD quality, which you've probably heard this number, 44.1, which means that you're sampling at 44,100 times per second. So you're asking, the computer is asking, what is the voltage? 44,100 times a second. What is the voltage? What is the voltage? What is the voltage? And in doing that, it's able to connect all these dots. Okay. So I'm telling you that number so that you kind of understand. Sometimes you're asked that in software. What sample rate do you want to record? Well, that's what it is. It's 44,100 times a second is CD quality. If you want to record at higher quality than CDs, you do 96 or 48,000 is what a lot of video work is done for. So if you're streaming, you usually use 48.
What do digital LPs do?
What is that? Oh, you mean like Laserdisc, or what are you
A
talking about?
long time ago, they had, right before CDs came out, you could have digital LP recordings.
Huh. I don't know, but DVDs
Yeah.
use 96 for sound, 96,000. I don't know what those digital, I'm not familiar with
They
that.
weren't around for long.
There's a lot of scientific data and stuff out there that says that really 48 is as high as we need to go to get everything. Even all of the psychoacoustic stuff that we can't hear but we experience, I guess. So I record, because I don't really record at 48 most of the time, I record at 96 because it's the closest thing to 48 for me. 44.1 is probably enough for anything you're ever doing. So that's just one thing. That's just sample rate. That's how often it's sampling the sound. We also have another variable. What number is it able to give? I mean, it has to give this some number. We start at 0 down here. This has to be something like 20 and 30, 50, or something like that. So the number, the resolution, is the bit depth. Does anyone know the bit depth of CD quality? Okay, that's 16 bits. Okay, so you've probably seen this, 44.1 kilohertz and 16 bit, and that's CD quality. We have 16 bits worth of information, which is actually 65,535 values that it can say that the voltage is. That's the resolution there. Okay, so really, this is all you really need. There's a lot of research out there that says that pretty much 17-bit would be better than 16-bit, and but 24-bit is way overkill. So this is, I'm just going to explain to you why. If we have 1 bit, then we have 2 values. We have a 0 or a 1. That's the way computers work. If there's 1 bit, it's either on or off. So our light switch is like 1 bit. 1, 0. You know, that's what we have for 1 bit. If we have 2 bits, then we have 2 spaces here. We can do 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1. We have 4 possibilities. So it doubled, didn't it, from 1 to 2. 2 to 3 doubles. We'll have 8 possibilities with 3-bit. that means that with 16-bit, if we do 17 bits, we'll have twice as many values than this. It'll get it, that'd be 130,000, almost 131,000 possibilities. So, but you only have the option of 16-bit or 24-bit. Those are your only options. You have lower. So, that said, once again, whenever I'm recording something that's really important, I do 96 and 24. But really, I have my main professor, whenever I was studying, he did everything at 44:116, and he knows more than me. So I would stay with this for everything, and you'll be fine. This will just take up a whole lot more space. Okay, so we record into this guy, and it translates it into something that digital that the computer can use, and then you plug it into here. So you think, okay, if what this does is just changes, or just reads the voltage, then I have a $150 one, that's what this is, that should be enough, right? If that's what it's doing, then why do I need to spend more money? Once again, the preamps are what you're paying for. So, same with the mixer. There are better interfaces out there that cost more, and that's usually the preamp. The conversion matters too, so it can convert from analog to digital better, and so that's why you spend more money. Okay, so I won't go too much deeper into that, but I do want to talk about audio files now, so you can kind of understand once it's in here what's going on. So, to begin with, we have MIDI. So a piano roll, you got this from the last class, a piano roll is much like MIDI. If I take this piano roll and put it in a player piano, it will play this, but it'll sound different than if I put it in my neighbor's player piano because theirs might be tuned differently. But all the information on this is just on and off, so that it tells what key to press and how long to press it and then when to lift off. That's what MIDI does. That's why MIDI files are so small. There's no recording in them. There's no audio data in there at all. It's just when to turn a note on and off. So then we have, this is where the audio side comes in. We have basically two different file types. And get some more room. Okay, so we have lossless file types and lossy file types. Lossless is like a WAV file or an AIFF file. Lossy is going to be your MP3, and AAC, and some other things too. So, lossless files have all of the data. They have every single sample that it said, what is the voltage, what is the voltage, what is the voltage. It has all of that in there. And so, if there's only one thing that you take from this, I would take home that when you record into your computer, you record into a lossless file type, which I don't think you'll have an option other than that, and then all along your editing process, always use lossless. So, if you work in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever you're working in, Audacity, work with it in this and then save it as a lossless file, a WAV file, if you're going to give it to someone else to do something else with. Or you're going to open it up. Let's say you work in your audio program and then you bring it into Premiere or Final Cut or something like that to do video work. Always bring in the lossless file and then keep going. Once you save it as a lossy file, you're losing data. It's great to use lossy files if you're going to email or stream or something because they're so much smaller. But basically what's happening, remember we had our 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz that we can hear. I'm somewhere around 18 or something because I played in the jazz band. But this is what an MP3 does right in the beginning. It decides to cut, let's say it cuts out everything above 20,000 hertz and cuts out everything below 20 hertz. If you were in a movie theater, you have felt 10 hertz, because like whenever, the dinosaurs come or something, you feel those really low tones, everything that's going through your subwoofers. But MP3s decide you can't hear it, so they cut it out. They also do things like anything that is, I forget the term, but whenever different instruments are playing at the same time and your brain tunes one out because the other instruments are dominating or the other speaking voice is dominating, what MP3s do is they decide those psychoacoustic things and they take out certain frequencies because they know your brain's going to tune them out anyways, so they take them out for you. There's a lot of complicated algorithms that go into making MP3s small, but you can have a 4-minute MP3 and it'll be 4 megabytes. You can have a 4-minute WAV file and it'll be 40 megabytes. So there are reasons to use MP3s. They still can sound pretty darn good, but you only use them at the end when you're done editing everything and you're ready to email and you're ready to stream it. Don't ever edit an MP3. It's just like faxing a fax of a fax of a fax of a fax of a fax. It starts to lose its quality, its look every time you send that fax over and over again. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to go into is bit rate. So we talked about sample rate and bit depth, but the confusing thing is bit rate. So bit rate means how much data is being passed over the internet per second. Okay, and that's calculated by taking the sample rate and hertz, and multiplying that by the bit depth, and multiplying that by the number of channels. So if it's stereo, it's 2. And this ends up being 1.2 kilobits per second. Not kilobytes, kilobits per second. And so the only reason I'm bringing this number up is this is CD quality, and then you are always asked when you're asked to save an MP3, you're asked what do you want the bit rate to be, and that's the quality. And so you have to make a choice, so I want to help you make that choice. You have seen numbers like 128 kilobits per second, or 160, or 192, or 320, even a higher number. You're asked these numbers, and so the higher the number you choose, that means that's the larger the file size, and the better the quality is going to end up being. Okay, does that make sense with bit rate? So the higher that number, the better your quality. There's another little twist in there too. You can decide to save as constant bit rate or variable bit rate. What variable bit rate means is it instead gives you a range. So it says, I'm gonna save everything at 160 kilobits per second, so a lower quality, when there's not much happening. So during that break of me speaking, it would go at a lower quality. And then while I'm speaking, it would bring it up to a much, much better quality. And that's what variable bit rate is. So it ends up, your file size ends up being smaller than if you were just to stay at the high quality, even whatever the lower quality is could be done. Now, you have to think about, do people still have an old Internet Explorer on their computer or something, or an old phone, and I want them to listen to that? Then a lot of companies decide to just do constant bit rate because all devices can do constant bit rate, and some older ones can't do variable bit rate. So I'm just telling you the data, and so you can now make the decision to put a check in that variable bit rate box or not. Yeah.
Sometimes where that comes into play in churches especially is if let's say you're uploading sermons. Sermons can be done at a lower bit rate because the variety of frequencies are a lot less. And so you can have a much smaller, if you had a 30-minute sermon as opposed to a 5-minute piece of music, You could do the sermon at a lower bit rate and have a similar file size than if you had a higher bit rate of music, because you have more frequencies that you're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah, and MP3s care about all the frequencies. A WAV file is just going to keep everything in there, and it doesn't make any choices for you. Yeah, good point.
You can't keep a lot of wave stuff on your computer while you're working. That's how
I mean, nowadays you can. I mean, space is not a problem as much, you know? Video is where the problem is. I mean, I'm fine with a lot of lossless. I mean, look, 40, maybe 10 megabytes per minute. That's not horrible compared to video, which is going to be, you know, for an hour of uncompressed, you're looking at a terabyte, you know? So, no. No. Never. I don't think I will ever either. Yeah. Any questions that, so now we're at a point where I have another stuff that I can cover, but I want to know if you have any questions, because we have like 7 minutes. Any audio tech questions? Okay. If it comes back, then let me know. I do want to show you this video, partly to show you this resource that's really great, Academy AV, and also to explain how a compressor works. So if you have vocalists and they're on the stage and they're singing, sometimes it's good to put some compression on there. What that can do is allow the louder sound, whenever they pop out and say something really loud, it can bring that down without affecting a certain range, without affecting anything below a certain decibel range. So it won't compress things that are quiet, but it will compress things that are loud. I use compression on our sermons from my church whenever I upload them, because just like any preacher, there's moments where he's just talking like this, and then moments whenever he gets really loud, and so I compress it in order to get the loud sounds softer, so I can then just make everything louder, which brings up the softer sounds. So here, let you see kind of the all of these little knobs. Whenever you decide to compress, you have to make decisions. And so if you don't understand what those decisions are, how can you make them?
In this video, we are going to look at an overview of compression. Compressors are very valuable as they allow us to reduce the dynamic range of a signal, which is the difference between the loud and soft parts of a signal. By compressing different amplitudes closer together, we are able to create a more level mix. So let's take a look at the compressor. There are several different control parameters available to us. The first thing we need to look at is the power button, or more accurately, the insert button. This is rather self-explanatory.
It's just if it's on or off.
Next, you will see input gain, where you can adjust the level at which the signal comes into the compressor. As with any audio device, you want to make sure you have a good strong signal for the compressor to function properly, but not so strong that you clip. After the gain stage is the threshold. The threshold tells the compressor at what decibel level to start compressing. Anything lower than the set threshold remains unaffected, while anything above is compressed. Next, we can fine-tune this threshold with the knee. The softer the knee, the more gradual the transition from compressed to uncompressed. The harder the knee, the harsher the transition. Now that we have told the compressor what signals to compress, we have to tell it how much to compress them. We do this with the compression ratio, which determines the amount. For example, a 2-to-1 ratio would reduce the part of the signal that is over the threshold by half. The next two things to set are your attack and release time. The attack time controls how long it takes for the signal to become fully compressed after it passes the threshold. The release time is the exact opposite and controls how long it takes for the signal to fully decompress after it drops below the threshold. After you have adjusted all the compression settings, the signal's overall level will be somewhat reduced. The output gain allows you to make up for the lost amplitude as a result of the applied compression. Now that you have an overview of how to use a compressor, we can take a look at specific scenarios where compression is important.
Okay, and so there are other filters that work similar to a compressor and are used with a compressor. So a limiter would would be something that you choose a certain threshold of decibel level, and it won't allow anything above that level to come out. So if there's an extra loud sound, it just won't allow that to come out. But those are usually used with compressors, so whenever it gets to a certain level, it will compress that loud sound anyways, and then if it gets to a certain level, it just will not let it go any louder than what it is at. And then, so what I do is, whenever I get my sermons from church to put online, I first actually run it through some audio repair software that's by Isotope. It's RX, and it's this kind of software that can take out all the noise that's in there. So even the noise you hear in this room right now, it'll take that out. It's an incredible software. But there's other repair software out there too, WaveLab. I mean, there's just a number of repair software. So first I repair it and make it clean and crisp, and then I move it into Logic and I put some compression on it. That allows the really loud stuff to go down, and then I can turn everything up so whenever he's whispering, that's loud enough to hear in your car. So you're not having to turn it way up in your car and turn it back down and up and down the whole time you're listening to the sermon. You can just leave it where it is. All pop music is compressed to death, and so you always hear everything all the time. Classical music, if you listen to that in your car, I'm sure some of you have, you're always having to turn it up and then turn it down because it's way too loud, and turn it up and turn it down. You don't want people to have to turn things up and down if they're listening with earbuds to a sermon or something. Yeah. Any questions? I think that's about it.
So you're only talking about audio, or are you talking about video that has audio?
Both, because if you're not live streaming, you have the ability to edit the audio before you put that video out. And I'm doing video, so I extract the audio actually first from my video, and using Premiere, which just takes out the file. It's a certain file, and then I mess with it, so I clean it up, and then I put it back in, and then I bounce my video. If you're live streaming, then you need to take all of this into consideration. So your board can do compression. Your board can do everything I just talked about except for repair. So in that case, you actually should do, make sure you get all the noise out of your line. And that's something I need to do. I need to go to my church and make sure, take out the buzz so I don't have to do it in post anymore. Which means I need to find what is creating the ground loop that I'm having to take out, what electronics are plugged in different circuits and messing me up.
Well, and there are some things you just have to work around, like air conditioner noise and those kinds of things if you're in a live situation. But you have to do that anyways.
Yep.
Yeah, we with our live broadcast, we do an awful lot on our board before we ever get the signal sent out, because we want people sitting there watching that live not to have to be turning the volume up and down.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's broadcast standards, which I don't even know all of them, which you probably know. You have to be cognizant of the decibel level, right? That you're giving them.
Yes.
Even if it's not clipping. Like, you have to be within a certain